So today we are doing the second part of exploring our position around LGBTQ plus issues, and today's session would be exploring programs and projects on LGBTQ plus issues. So this is the agenda for today. We will have a recap of the first webinar done by Winifred on the 30th of November. And then we will have a situational analysis of the issue, and we will go into the four quadrants of change. And we will also have voices from the field, from Good Shepherd Cagayan de Oro, Philippines, and Good Shepherd Australia, New Zealand. This was the session that Winifred took us through on the 30th of November. And from then till now, we have had so many responses on this session. Many people are very grateful for how Winifred has introduced us to this very difficult session, how she did it with so much respect and gentleness, and led each one of us through the different aspects of this issue. And I just like to touch on some of the key highlights that Winifred led us through so that we can be better prepared for this session on programs and projects. We spoke about the terminologies that surrounded the LGBTQ plus issue, and Winifred took us through a whole host of different terminologies and acronyms, and also we also spoke about binary and non-binary terms, and there was this whole issue about distinguishing between sexuality and gender, and we have all the points and all the slides that were given to us, and we are able to see how the differences are and how we need to be mindful about how we address people from this community as well. We also heard about the legal aspects, and we learned what the sodomy law is all about and which countries criminalize same-sex relations. And by looking at this map here from 1790 to 2019, how the world has changed and how it has become more accepted today. And for those of us who are within the countries that are shaded red, we also know the challenges that we face in addressing this issue. And if you look at the map, Malaysia is one of those countries that are shaded in red. And then we went on and we looked at the human rights issues. And from the human rights perspective, there is this UN Free and Equal Forum as well. And we learned that, lesbians, gays, and bisexuals do not claim any special or additional rights, but just the observers of the same rights as those of heterosexual persons. And this was a very good insight for us that every human person is entitled to equal rights before the law. And then we went on to looking at religion, and Winifred took us through Father James Martin and his book on building a bridge. And we also heard that we are not looking at this from a morality issue, but we are looking at this from a pastoral professional lens on a human rights-based approach. We also delved into the Catholic social teaching, especially Article 2357, 2358, and 2359. And at this point, I would like to stress about Article 2358, which says that the number of men and women who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies is not negligible. They do not choose to accept their homosexual condition. For most of them, it's a trial. They must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided. Yeah, and we take our cue for ministry from this article on 2358. And we also delved into the joy of love by the Holy Father and what it entails. So we had a whole spectrum of looking at terminologies And then we went into rights-based approaches. Then we went into the legal aspects, and we looked at the position of the church. And this last position of the church is very dear to us because we are a faith-based group. Okay, so at this point, I just know that it has been 2 weeks since the first webinar, and most of us have gone through the video again, and we've looked at the slides, and we have had discussions on our own around this issue. I just want to invite you at this point, just to pause for a moment before we continue and describe in one word your current position around LGBTQ plus issues. I'm going to stop sharing the slide now, and I'm going to invite Veronica to paste into the chat box a Mentimeter link, where it will, we will be able to see, and you will be able to key in one word around your position today, after 2 weeks of Winifred's session, around the LGBTQ issues. So, Veronica, are you? Yeah. So you can see here the link. Veronica, you need to post it into everyone in the meeting, not in the waiting room.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Yeah. Okay. If you see the link here, please enter that link and key in your response, your one-word response, and I will share screen. Okay, I'm going to share screen shortly. Thank you for keying in. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
No.
You can't see my screen? Okay, let me do it again. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
So we are seeing words like acceptance, inclusiveness, compassion, better understanding, respect, equal rights, hopeful, acceptable, don't judge, better informed, expanded understanding, got awareness, human, welcoming, don't judge. Someone has said difficult to describe. Thank you about that. Thank you for this sharing. We've got nothing wrong. Okay, we've got aware, very encouraging, affirming, and the biggest word that we see here is acceptance, inclusiveness, compassion, respect, ally. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing this, and we can proceed with the session. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's great. So let's continue. As with all sessions on application, I'd like to bring us to this ecosystem of the program participant, where the program participant is within a family system, a community, the society at large, a country, and the international sphere. So in all our sessions, we've been saying that all human beings, including LGBTQ plus persons, are rights holders whose rights are codified in the UN International Covenants and Conventions, empowerment of rights holders to claim their rights. And all rights have corresponding duty bearers, state and non-state actors, who are responsible in fulfilling the corresponding rights in a given context, and the accountability of duty bearers to fulfill those rights. So when we talk about non-state actors here, We as Good Shepherd, who are service providers to people who are in situations of crisis, or we have schools, we are non-state actors. We are also duty bearers in the roles that we play. And as Good Shepherd, our position is always to close the capacity gaps between the rights holders and the duty bearers. So I will go to the next screen now, and we look at the situation surrounding the LGBTQI issue. If we've been hearing the sessions, and if we've been in the past 2 weeks or even before, prior to this, have been reflecting on the issues that surround the LGBTQ plus community, we would know that there's a whole lot of discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation. And this discrimination could be social, cultural, religious, political, and so on, and economic as well. And we also heard the urgency for reform of policies, laws, mindsets, awareness training for communities, the need to take into account the vulnerability of all, irrespective of gender identity and sexual orientation, and legal system that protects and accepts LGBTQ plus people into society. So we saw this and we heard about this in the session with Winifred. I will now attempt, as always, to put it into a situational analysis. And I've taken the manifestations from the Human Rights Watch article on LGBT rights, and I've taken the root causes from an article on the Harvard Gazette. And Winifred, in her last session, also spoke about this person, Victor Madrigal-Borlos, who is the UN independent expert on the protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And he's in residence in the Harvard Law School. So these are the two positions where I've taken the situational analysis from. This is because we do not have a position on LGBTQ issues at the moment. So I've put the source at the top for the manifestation and the source at the bottom for the root causes. So let's go through them. We've got negative stereotypes and labeling of people who are LGBTQI+. And then we've got torture, killing and executions. We know about this in countries where this is still criminalized. We've got arrest under unjust laws, unequal treatment, censorship. People are not allowed to speak on issues of LGBTQ. We've got medical abuses, especially in relation to persons who are going for sex change, discrimination in health, in jobs, and in housing. We have domestic violence and intimate partner violence, domestic violence with same-sex couples, abuses against children, and abuses against children will also include bullying in school and in the school setting. We also have denial of family rights and recognition of this individual's participation within the family and within the community. So these are some of the manifestations that we experience and that we see of people who are LGBTQ+. And then we have the root causes. And of course, the main root cause would be discrimination, cultural, social, political. We also have economic discrimination. And then we have power relations. Role in society is determined by genital configuration, yeah? Non-recognition of the social identity of LGBTQ+ persons. Now, if you see an asterisk after the root cause, this is taken from the Harvard article. We have demonization. LGBTQ+ lives are sinful, immoral, cannot be good citizens. We also have biases and prejudices, homophobia. Homophobia would be discrimination against people who are gay. And criminalization, we already heard about this, being LGBTQ+ is illegal. So let's just pause for a moment and look at this slide. And just reflect a little bit our own situation and ask ourselves in the manifestations that we see, how are we with this? And in the root causes, especially on discrimination and homophobia, are we also part of the root causes? Okay, so just to reflect a bit on this. It is very important when we are looking at programs and projects that we are we take cognizance of manifestations, and we also take cognizance of root causes, because for us to address an issue, we need to address from both the root cause and from what we see. So let's move on. And as we look at the manifestations, we see that persons who are from the LGBTQ plus communities, by far and large, in some countries and in countries that still criminalize people of this orientation, they are denied their basic civil, political, social, and economic rights. If we are approaching this from a rights-based approach. Let's look at our position papers. And I've added, aside from the 6 position papers, you will see one other icon on gender-based violence, which includes a whole host of things, and which part of this 6 position papers are also considered part gender-based violence. But I just wanted to bring this issue out because most of us are also working on issues of domestic violence, incest and rape, etc. So this is the question I have for us. If Good Shepherd's focus is on women, girls, and children, and if we look at the LGBTQI community, are we ready to accept a lesbian or a transgendered person or an intersex person as a program participant? Yeah, this is the question we ask when we are looking at our programs and projects. Because we say Good Shepherd's focus is on women, girls, and children. So I've narrowed down the community to possible people who may approach us when they're experiencing some form of exploitation and marginalization, or if they're experiencing some form of crisis, especially in relationships. How many of us who are working on the issue of trafficking of women and girls, or people who have residential programs, especially residential programs for women experiencing crisis, and residential programs for people who have been trafficked, and they are referred to us by the government or by the embassies, by the welfare department. Do we have a space within our programs for people who are lesbians or transgendered person or an intersex person? A good question to reflect on. I just want to share this one phrase that is taken from the 2019 Good Shepherd supplement to formation. It's a supplement to the 2013 manual that the Good Shepherd congregation has on formation. You can't remake the world without remaking yourself. Each new era begins within. This is a good point to reflect that we cannot make changes on the outside unless we start looking at what's within us. With that, I'd like to bring you to the 4 quadrants of change. Many people know about the 4 quadrants of change. I think we have a bit of time. I'd like to stop sharing screen here and just ask you if up to this point, do you have anything that you want to ask? Any reaction that you have? Because if you do, just feel free to say something. Introduce yourself and then just reflect.
Teresa, Gendry here. Some people have posted in the chat rooms, as well as participants,
Yes.
in your question, are we also ready to accept staff?
Yes, that's a good question, and we'll talk about that. Thank you, Gendry. Anyone else? Okay, let's continue then. Okay. Okay. So we are looking at the 4 quadrants of change, and for many of us in Asia Pacific, we are familiar with the spiral dynamics and these 4 quadrants of change because we have looked at it many times. So we know that the upper 2 quadrants, 1 and 2, relate to the individual, and the individual is you and I, each one of us who's here in this session, and all our colleagues and all our friends and all our program participants, they're all individuals. And we look at quadrants 3 and 4, that's the collective. That means as a group of people, as a community, as an organization. So individual and collective. And we look at quadrants 2 and 4, and they are called the external quadrants. External quadrants means what people see on the outside of us as individuals and what people see on the outside of us as an organization. So what people see on the outside of us as individuals would be our skills, our behavior, our peak performances, and as an organization would be our organizational design, our workflow, our policies, our procedures. And we also have here the internal. Internal would be something that we don't see. You can see me here, I'm talking to you. You see the blouse that I'm wearing. You can see my hairstyle, you can see the shape of my glasses, etc. But what you can't see would be what's internal, what's my psychological makeup, what's my spiritual makeup, what's my cognitive makeup, you see? In the same way, every organization and every community, every family, every society, every country has an internal collective that we don't see, which would be our cultures, which would be our shared symbols, our stories, which will be how we relate to each other, would be how our vision, mission, and core values are. So these are our internal structures. When we look at the 4 quadrants of change, we are very cognizant that all 4 quadrants are equally important. We cannot make a change if we don't address all 4 at the same time. The starting point may be different, but there is a need to be cognizant of all 4 quadrants. So when we look at quadrant 1, it is concerned with changing one's own sense of identity. As we delve deeper into quadrant 1 and what our own beliefs and biases are, we will actually be changing our behavior patterns in quadrant 2. So when we look at quadrant 2, it's concerned with changing one's own behaviors in our interaction with others. So if we are looking at the issue of LGBTQ+, I will, in my next slide, ask us questions that relate to both quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. If we look at quadrant 3, it is concerned with the collective values of fairness and justice. What are our collective values as an organization on fairness and justice with regards to the LGBTQ+ issues? And if we look at quadrant 4, it's concerned with governance, decision-making processes, and organizational structures. For us to even think of reaching out to the LGBTQ community, are we LGBTQ safe? Are we LGBTQ inclusive? And I'm glad that there were 2 questions in the chat box just now about how are we with accepting people who are from this community within our staff, within our human resources, and as partners in mission. So when we look at the 4 quadrants of change, I've just simplified it with the comments on the side so that it's easier to understand where the quadrants are coming from. This is a blank slate. Then I put in the middle LGBTQ+. And I'm going to go through now quadrant by quadrant. And if we talk about quadrant 1, this is concerning changing my own identity. We need to ask ourselves, what are my biases and prejudices? Do I see myself as in the root cause as well, in the way my perceptions? What are my principles and value system inclusive of the LGBTQ+ issue? How much do I know about this issue? What do I need to let go of? And what do I need to relearn? And if you have a notebook or a pencil with you at the moment, I'm just going to pause for 1 minute here for us to just look at these questions. And just to reflect a bit and say, where am I with these questions? There could be other questions on around this, but it's important that these are just the starting point for us to start reflection. And I think for us as Good Shepherd, the burning question for us is, do we care enough to want to change as individuals? Do we care enough to want to do something about this? Because we can only start to address our biases and our prejudices first if we know we have biases and prejudices, and second, if we know the consequence and the effect of our bias and prejudice. If we are not able to address these two questions, then we are not ready for the process of change. Because we can't change unless we know we have biases. I go next to quadrant 2, which relates to our biases and prejudices and to our internal structures that the others don't see, but is manifested in our behavior patterns. I only have 3 points, but there are so many other points here. How do I behave when I'm in the company of LGBTQ plus persons? Am I uncomfortable? Am I accepting? Am I able to be myself? Am I inclusive? What is my language around this issue? Sometimes we don't realize it, but language is one of the easiest ways to examine our biases and prejudices, because what comes out in our speech is actually an unconscious thing. Third, what skills do I have to work with program participants who are LGBTQ+? If a program participant is referred to us and she's a transgender, do I have the skills to work with her in addressing domestic violence issues? So similar with quadrant 1, I invite you to just reflect for a moment on this. Now we look at quadrant 3, which is our collective internal. And all of us here, we belong to some form of community, whether it's a religious community, whether it's a community within our office, because we spend more time in the office or with our colleagues virtually now than sometimes we do with our own family members. Or it could be a community of friends. Yeah. So what is our collective value system on the LGBTQ plus issue as a community and as an organization? After looking at our collective value, what is our collective position around LGBTQ plus issues? What will it take for us to make the mindset shift to accept LGBTQ plus persons as staff and program participants? I would like to make a comment here when I speak about staff. Normally when we have a selection criteria or we have interviews of people who are wanting to work within the Good Shepherd organization or the Good Shepherd system. We don't ask people what their gender and sexual orientation is all about. We do not do that because that is very disrespectful. But if we do find out along the way that, you know, our staff and people who are working with us are from the LGBTQ plus community, then the question would be, how do we accept such persons? Or do we suddenly have a change in mindset in how we look at them before we know and after we know? And this kind of change in perception actually goes back to Quadrant 1, to our biases and prejudices. And it also goes to Quadrant 3, to our collective internal as an organization. What kind of values do we have and what kind of positions do we take around these issues? So just spend a moment to reflect on Quadrant 3. Are there existing biases at the moment on a collective internal scale? And perhaps if there are, they are not spoken of openly. And perhaps if we know of people within our staff who are from this community, we also do not address this and we just keep silent about it. Is there a difference in our perception when we view a heterosexual person versus a person who is gay within our staff? Yeah, so good questions to ask ourselves. Now we look at Quadrant 4. Are our hiring policies inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community? Are our programs LGBTQ plus ready? What are the policy systems and governance structures that are needed to make Good Shepherd organization a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community? So this would be in Quadrant 4. In Quadrant 4, looking at the external collective, looking at systems, governance, decision-making, hiring policies, looking at our surroundings, looking at our interventions, our standard operating procedures. These are very hard questions because in all our other programs, we are talking about the issue. Here, we are talking about the person itself. And it's a different dimension and a different perception and a different position that we have to take. Because when we talk about the person itself, it touches our skin. And it brings us within our boundaries of comfort. And sometimes if we look at these questions, it calls us to come out from our own comfort zone and to change our paradigm from what we have been reinforced from our formation, from society, from religious backgrounds, and etc., etc. It calls for a change in mindset. Okay, I will now move on to inviting our people to share with us, to hear voices from the field. And the first one we have is from the Philippines. From this point in the Philippines, Cagayan de Oro City, the Good Shepherd Crisis Center, where they work with individuals in situation of prostitution, those who work in the bars or on the street. And we have Sister Diana Madulara from Good Shepherd to share with us I'm going to stop sharing screen. So just tell me when to move screen, sister.
Okay. Actually, we only have few slides.
Yes.
Sisters and friends, maayong buntag sa tanan. So that is the Cebuano greetings for good morning, everyone from Mindanao.
Good morning, sister.
Good morning. So sisters and friends, we come from the northern part of Mindanao, which is the stretch of the Archdiocese of Cagayan de Oro, which comprises the provinces of Misamis Oriental, Camiguin, and the city of Cagayan de Oro. So anyway, when Miss Diane called me from our Manila head office with regards to the sharing of the program for LGBTQ community, I was a little bit hesitant since our ministry here in the Archdiocese does not have a specified program for the LGBTQ plus categories. However, we can share some of our experiences and discoveries with regards to with our programs here in the center. So anyway, I would like to start our sharing with the word of Mother Foundress. Okay, so a person is of more value than the whole world. Since we have to be grounded by this principle of Mother Foundress, whoever that person is, whatever she or he is, and wherever that person uh, is. So here in Cagayan de Oro, actually we have 4 programs under the Archdiocese Cagayan de Oro Women Ministry. And one of this program is the Drop-in Belen Center, which is a temporary shelter for prostituted and trafficked women and girls. So with this, since it is a center, we also have other programs. Of course, we have, can you go to the next slide? So this is our center, just a small one. We only have 2 doors and small place. So this is under the Archdiocese of Cagayan de Oro. So this is the Drop-in Belen Center. So we have we have programs under the drop-in center. So we have the shelter care. We also have the educational assistance through our alternative learning system of the government, which we call ALS. And we also have the legal assistance, which is we refer the program participants to other agencies. And then we also have the reach out and rescue. Rescue if it is needed, because we are not the ones to rescue supposedly. It should be the government, but since sometimes we need to rescue some girls. But we have the reach out to women and children. We also have the medical assistance and of course, the spiritual formation for the women and children. For the last 3 programs, the Reach Out, the medical, and the psych-social spiritual formation, it will go hand in hand for our Wednesday activities, to which the volunteers or our volunteers would always refer to personhood. So in our Reach Out programs, on the next slide, please. So in our Reach Out program, we are lucky that we have our partner group. We have group of brave women who are also our partners in mission. So they are the Tisaka organization. Tisaka means, I would just like to introduce them to you, sisters and friends. Tisaka means tingog sa kasanag, or voice of the dawn, or the enlightenment. These are women who have heard the voice and in the wilderness. They are actually on the process of healing and trying to make their lives fruitful and meaningful. So they are the ones, the Sisaka volunteers are the ones going to the streets twice or thrice a week to have a chat with the freelancers. So during the reach out. So they are the ones talking with women and children in the establishment and on the streets. And they invite them to come to our centers to our center so that they will be held for hygiene on Wednesday. Because every Wednesday in Drop-in Belen, before the pandemic, we have the Wednesday activity, which they call the personhood, but actually it is a psycho-spiritual or social and spiritual formation. So we have our programs during Wednesday. We serve lunch. And then some of the girls will come around 11 o'clock because we know that at times they come to us, they will sleep usually at dawn or early morning. So they will wake up almost 11 o'clock na in the morning. So during the reach out, we will talk with them, and then some of the women and children, others would ask for food, and some would, we will bring them to a nearby food chain or cafeteria. But during the Wednesday activity, we will serve lunch. And then of course, during lunchtime, and after lunch, um, some of our volunteers will accompany them, accompany the women and children. The children, I would mean 11, or sometimes most of the girls are 13 years old. And then they go to the City Health Center. Actually, City Health Center is just around, maybe around 250 meters away from us. And then they will have their hygiene there. And then they will come back to our center for the psychosocial or spiritual formation. So with that formation, we have sessions. First, we have session, especially when the girls come to our center, the women come to our center, they will have session on personhood or the spiritual formation, who they are as a person. And then we have a continuous formation if they continues to come to our center. But within that period, so we serve lunch, and then they go to the city health center. And then after that, while waiting for the result of of the hygiene, so they will come back to our center for the psych spiritual formation. So they have the sessions on yun nga, personhood, self-discovery. Others are on the body workout. So we group them according to level. If they are first timer, they have the first personhood, and then if they are second or third already who came to the center, so they have a continuous program. What's these sessions? So the Philippine legislation or laws on different violations to women and children, and then we also have faith sharing. Faith sharing is based on the gospel of the day. And then actually, it is during this time, well, as I said, during this period, it is during this time that during the sessions, that we get to know the women and children as we listen to their stories and struggles and the realities of who she is, who she or he is living with, and who she might have. She might have a child, but she has a lesbian partner, or she herself is a lesbian. And later have we realized that we are able to reach out to lesbians, and but we continue to reach out to them. Few of these women in situation are actually in situation. What I mean in situation are they are in the prostitution, and then some of them became lesbian because of the circumstances. But as I said, we continue to reach out to them, and some of these women actually stayed in our center for sometimes. They stayed in our center. Maybe it could be for a week or 2 weeks, depending on the if they want to, if they have the capacity na. And then some of these women also become our volunteers. Some of us, they are with us now. Actually, they are with us now. So they are there are two who are reach out volunteer in our center. So with regards to gays, there are times that the girls who would come to the center are accompanied by gays. So the children, especially those 13, 14 years old, so they come to our center, and then when they come, there are gay friends who would come or accompany them. At first, we accommodated them, although they had to stay outside of the center. Actually, we have a big space, but we only have a small space for the drop-in Belen. So they have to stay outside of that area wherein we have our session, and then they have to stay outside, and then of course since they are there, so we serve them food also. But there is another volunteer who will take charge to them, to chat with them, and then to get to know them too. And some of them are HIV positive. But later have we known that few of them also pimp. They are the ones. Some of these gay friends, we do not, at first we did not know that they are the ones pimp our girls from the center. So they are looking for a prey on who is to be pimped. So that is one of the challenges that I'm going to say it later. But still, we invited them to come to our center on Tuesday, on different dates. So with the girls, we asked them to come on Wednesday, but there was a time that we asked them to come on Tuesday for the gays without the girls' presence. But you know what? Nobody came. So we still have, but we still befriend them. So actually, when we go to the streets in the evening, we come to see them and they will just talk with us. Oftentimes they ask for condom and we still continue to encourage them to come to our center for our educational program since we have the alternative learning system. So actually, we are happy to hear from them that they also take some alternative learning system from other partners. So that's it. And then for our best practices, on the next slide, just like Mother Foundress, we just practice what she said to us, which is the spirit of welcome and acceptance of the person, whoever she is, whether she is a lesbian or gay. So we welcome them, although there was a time that we are, hesitant to let them in, but we tried to find some time for them, but still, anyway, so we let them in, but they refused to come in on Tuesday. We also serve them food and drink, as Mother Founders would always like to, to serve. And then we also listen to their stories without judgment. So, yun. And then we also, we are lucky that we have other organization that we are able to network with here in the Archdiocese or in Cagayan de Oro. So we have the City Health Center for STI, HIV, and AIDS program for their testing. And then we also have the NORMAA. NORMAA stands for Northern Mindanao AIDS Alliance, which are most of the members are people living with HIV. And then we also have the Alagad Mindanao, which is an NGO that helps for people living with HIV. And these last two networks, the NORMAA and Alagad Mindanao, would always contact us for their ongoing formation. So that's how we have in contact with gays group. And that's how we have served the people living with HIV, to which I was able to listen and accompany in their struggles. So for the past weeks, I was able to give them sessions already. So what are the challenges that we have? I note only few sisters and friends in our experience for young gays. They look for, as I said earlier, they are the ones who pimp our girls from the center. So that is one of our challenges when we invited them for the gays. And then we tried to have a separate, as I said, we have to give them separate sessions, but we do not have to mix them with straight, I said straight women and girls because as I said earlier, they are the ones who pimp our girls and they just come to our center, for looking for somebody, especially for young women, for young children, for young girls. And then maybe the challenge is also we have to have a separate programs for them. But for the future plan, for now, we don't have actually for future plan, not just yet, but we are open to accommodate them. And actually, as I said earlier, for the lesbian group, we already have one, we have two volunteer in the center, but for the gays and other, for other members of the society, especially for the transgender, I do not have any contact with them yet. But for the lays and for the gays and lesbian, we already had. So I think that's all for the sisters and friends. And I would just like to end our sharing with these words of Mother Foundress. I belong to all countries where there are souls to be saved. For me, maybe the countries now is no longer limited to people of different race, different color, or but on different, but on the different gender that we have now in our society. So salamat po. And that's all, I guess. Teresa, thank you very much. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po. Yes, thank you so much, Sister Diana, for that sharing. Thank you for bringing into this space your work with the LGBTQ community, and for your sharing about what you do and the challenges that you're facing. I just ask at this point if anyone here has any reaction or one or two questions that we can take for Diane. No? Okay. Then maybe if you do have, we can take them all at the end of the session, because Diane will still be with us until the end of today's session. Thank you, Diane, for sharing.
Thank you also.
Thank you. Salamat po. Yes. I just want to now move on and invite our colleagues and our friends from Australia to share with us. We have Gendry and Yvonne here this morning. Gendry, I've made you a co-host so that you can share screen, and also Yvonne. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Eve, I think you're going to share the screen for us. Thanks everybody for having us. We'll do this together. It's going to share a screen which has on it what's the word called an acknowledgement. And we just want to say that in our culture, we, as part of our diversity, acceptance of diversity and understanding of cultural difference and recognition of reconciliation, we always acknowledge the original owners of the land we meet on. So in Australia, it would go this way when the slide comes. So we always acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as first Australian Nations people. But today we are on many lands. So we pay respects to all the First Nations people from all the lands on which we're on. And we pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respect to any First Nations peoples joining us here in the Zoom today. Our session today is about the journey of an organisation. The journey of an organisation on how we as individuals and collectively have been able to engage, incorporate, accept, all those beautiful words, respect the LGBTQI community. There are four key points we're going to raise. One is we are still on the journey. We are continuing the journey. It is an ongoing journey. And the second is that it's about being in the spirit, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier, of treating everybody equally. We have a diversity policy within our organisation, and Eve's title actually is Culture and Diversity Lead. So we actually have a person in that role specifically to help us in the journey. And the third thing is that you will see through the presentation that we have had to touch on all the four quadrants: our internal, external, individual, internal, external, and same with our collective. And the final point that we'll open up is that the most important thing is about having a safe place for everybody in your organisations and your communities. And so with those key points, I just want to hand over to Eve, who's going to unpack the story for us. Thanks, Eve.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Gendry. So just to quickly give you an idea of who we are at Good Shepherd Australia New Zealand, our mission and what we work towards is a future where women, girls and families are safe, well, strong and connected. And to do this, we deliver a range of different programs, all underpinned by a set of values that you can see there. And you all might have, I guess, like some similar values, but this really aligns to everything we do and it guides everything we do as well. In the work that I do with the people at our organisation, I think that the values of reconciliation, of justice, and the value of each person is quite central, because that means that we start to embody the values, and it's a way of being, and it's also a way that we view our world. And as was shared earlier by Sister Diane, is the quote from Sister Mary Fraser, that one person is of more value than a world. That really is a central tenet that we focus on when it comes to inclusion and cultural safety, and valuing and celebrating acceptance, accepting all types of diversity. So we have a range of programs all throughout Australia. I won't go through all of them, but that's just a snapshot of the types of programs that we offer. We have specialist family violence services. We have services for young people, including counselling and homelessness services. We provide financial counselling and financial literacy support, and also high security refuge for women and children who are experiencing or escaping any form of family violence or intimate partner violence. And so before I go on to, I guess, explain our journey in a bit more detail, I think it's important to touch on the context from which that we're working in. And so there you can see just a snapshot of a few key pieces of legislation that have passed here in Australia that really supports the work that we're doing as an organisation. So in 2017, in December, the Australian government amended the Marriage Act to allow and recognise the union of same-sex couples. This was in response to, I think, just over 60% of Australians who voted in that postal survey in support of that change. Last year in Tasmania, one of our states, it became the first Australian jurisdiction to protect the rights of gender diverse people, allowing them to change the gender information on their birth certificates without having to go through any type of surgery. And only a couple of weeks ago, another state, which is in South Australia, that became the last state or territory in Australia to abolish the so-called gay panic defence. And this particular, I guess, defence meant that a person could have a murder charge downgraded to manslaughter if the accused person could argue that they were affronted by and lost self-control when the victim made a perceived or real advance towards them. So these are quite significant changes which have fundamentally changed the lives of all LGBTIQ people in Australia. But I guess I want to highlight that these are relatively recent changes. As you see there, we had the change to the Marriage Act only 3 years ago. So we are, as a country, are still on this very long journey to realising the basic human rights of LGBTIQ people. So now I'll share a bit about our journey as an organisation, and I think touching on what Teresa had presented before and the 4 quadrants, we needed to start with ourselves. We needed to we had to reflect critically on what our thoughts were, what our values were, what our prejudices are, and our biases. And we needed to confront some of that if we were really committed as an organisation to move forward. And so for all of us, the change had to start from within. And we knew that to make lasting organisational change, you know, that this was important in order to lead the organisation through this process together. And through that, we had to ask ourselves questions like, what do I need to learn more of? How will I arm myself with information and with knowledge and stories from those with lived experience in order to be and do better? We then applied these same questions to our organisation, and we have to ask ourselves questions like, how will this affect our identity as an organisation? How does this fit with our mission and our values? And how audacious are we in realising our mission? Through that process again, we had to then identify what supports we needed to establish or perhaps even strengthen to enable people to move along on this journey with us. And I think that Genji would agree that this process has and still is ongoing, does create some feelings of discomfort because it is about having to confront I guess some thoughts and ideas and beliefs that I think perhaps don't really align with the values of the organisation and what that means in terms of moving ahead and creating a safe and inclusive space for everybody who comes to our service. So in order to do that, to get a sense of where we are or where we were as an organisation when we started this journey, is we took a bit of a, I guess, a survey to determine, well, what is the pulse check? Where do our people see our journey? How do they see our approach to being more inclusive of LGBTIQ people? And it was a way for us to try to identify what are some of the training gaps that we needed to fill, what's the appetite for change amongst our staff, and also to find out how many in our workforce actually identifies LGBTIQ. Here's just a snapshot of some of the survey results back from 2018. And I think you can see that 81% of the staff who took the survey overwhelmingly said that it was very important for Good Shepherd to be inclusive of LGBTIQ people. At that time of our organisation, we had about a quarter of our staff identify as either lesbian, gay or bisexual. We've actually re-administered the same survey over the last 2 years. So we have 3 years of results now. And as a growing organisation, this year's results show that about 15% of our staff team identifies LGBTIQ, which is about the same kind of proportion as LGBTIQ Australians. So I think from that we can see that LGBTIQ people at least feel safe to apply and work for an organisation like Good Shepherd. And so in order to kind of raise awareness and to bring everyone on this journey together, we came up with some strategies and some events that not only uplifted LGBTIQ people, but also celebrated them. This journey that we're on is a long one, and we certainly are prepared to do the work for, you know, the years to come to keep, I guess, strengthening the way that we be inclusive and the way that we embrace LGBTIQ people. And we certainly know that changing hearts and minds takes time, and so we're not wanting to rush through this work. We take the time and we pause and we reflect to know if we're on the right track, and we go and consult with people to help guide us as we're on this journey. And so, for example, one of the initiatives that we have done is that we have found an LGBTIQ awareness training, and we include that as part of the training that all new employees need to undertake when they start with us as an employee. That training is also something that is delivered to all of our board members as well. So again, it's taking that organisational approach so that everybody has the same level of understanding and awareness and knowledge of LGBTIQ people and communities. I guess I just also want to point out that our commitment to, I guess, to be more inclusive of LGBTIQ people is part of a larger commitment to be a safe place for everybody. And so that's regardless of someone's sexual orientation, their gender, their race, their faith, their ability, and their country of birth, and so on. So this is one part of a larger organisational plan that we have embarked on. I guess another part of our journey is also about lending our voice and lending our position of power and privilege to support and advance the rights of people who have been historically oppressed and disadvantaged and discriminated against. Here are 2 examples of how we have formed some very strong coalitions with other faith-based organisations to advocate on behalf of LGBTIQ people and protecting their human rights. the photo where you have the signatures on that sign, that was actually an initiative of our state government, and they helped to bring all the faith-based organisations together to make this, I guess, a pledge to say that we will be a safe place for any LGBTIQ people who come to our doors looking for support and assistance. And as Gendry pointed out earlier, it's so important to ensure that we create a safe space for this work, because for a lot of people, and as I said before, about 14% of our staff team identifies LGBTIQ, and so for a lot of people, this work is very personal. Either they are part of the community or they have a family member or close friend who's part of the community, and so we wanted to make sure that we protect them as much as we can while we work through this journey together. And so for our organisation, as I mentioned before, this is not just about LGBTIQ people, it's about ensuring that we reach a point of reconciliation with our First Nations people. It's also about trying to combat, I guess, issues of sexism and racism and ableism and Islamophobia, etc. So this is part of a larger plan that we want to try to get ourselves to a point where we are safe for everybody and everyone feels safe to come to us, as a service participant or as an employee. Our plan also recognises that there's no one group that's homogenous. So for example, we work with clients and have employees who are LGBTIQ, but who may also come from a refugee background. So how do we make sure that we are considerate and sensitive to the issues that for that particular person that they've had to live through and survive? And so this means a strong commitment to having respectful and non-judgmental conversations, even if we don't all agree. It's about accepting all people who walk through our door. It's about creating a space where people can see themselves like reflected in what they see when they come to our service. It's also about creating a safe place where it's safe for us to make mistakes. I think it's quite safe to say that, you know, there's no one here who's an expert in this work, and if we create a safe place where it's okay to make mistakes and we learn and we move on, then we're in a much stronger position in learning together as we go forward. So that's the end of the presentation. So I thank you all for the time to share our journey with you. We certainly haven't finished this work, and we still have a lot of work to go, and it's, you know, again, important to highlight when we first started this journey, we did have to step carefully into this space, but it was important that we were willing to take that first step. And so I recognise that we are very privileged to work in a country like Australia, where I can do this work quite freely without any fear. You know, like for my own safety. I understand that that perhaps isn't the case for everybody who's here today. But if I can invite you all, you know, please feel free to reach out to either Gendry or myself if you'd like to have a conversation about where you are on your journey, and we'll be more than happy to share. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yvonne and Gendry. That was really a very inspiring conversation that you brought us through. Thank you so much. I will now want to go back to sharing my screen. And where is my screen? Hold on, I'm getting there. Okay. As you can see, I had an introduction slide done for Gendry and Yvonne, yes, which I was not able to share just now. I just want to highlight that in Good Shepherd Australia, New Zealand's emails and in their website, you will notice that this pride flag is part of their signature. So it just goes to show that GSANZ is a safe space for people from the LGBTQ community. I just like to move on with the next bits, and then we will go into our breakout groups just to talk a little bit about what we're experiencing today. So this is my next slide. Just like to invite you into this process as you are listening, and as you are, a lot of things are happening within us as we are listening, especially about creating safe spaces and where we are in our biases and in our prejudices. So the first step of looking at where we are is assessing our own ignorance and recognizing what you don't know and what I don't know. And when we are able to do this and look at ourselves and say, I really don't know about this, then the next step we do is we open our minds to curiosity, and we ask ourselves, if I'm not sure of this, or if I'm not sure of issues surrounding the LGBTQ community, how can I open up my mind to curiosity? How can I be curious about this? And next, after being curious about this and after reading and doing some research, and we then are able to say and assess our disconnect with the issue, meaning that the more we know that we are disconnected and that there are parts within us that needs to be realigned. And so when we enter into the shoes of the other, the only way to understand a situation is to enter into the shoes of the other and to activate compassion. And to activate compassion means we are moving to where our heart is and to where the core of our mission is. And then we look at a person, like Yvonne said, if the person is a refugee, but is a lesbian as well, how do we understand and step into those shoes and activate compassion within us? Next, as we activate compassion, we assess our frustration, because we know that when we are at this stage, we are frustrated because we want to do more. We want to do more, but perhaps the system around us and the context where we are operating in is a bit challenging. And how then do we take courage and to step forward into the unknown? How do we take that first step after accessing our ignorance and knowing that we are disconnected from the issue and knowing that we are frustrated because we want to do something? How do we take courage and step forward into the unknown? And once we do that, we need to access our experience as well. We need to access our experience and cross through the gates of suspending our judgment, and shifting or redirecting our attention to access the source. What is the source that drives us? Diane shared that it's in the words of St. Mary Euphrasia, one person is of more value than the whole world. How are we living out the core values of Good Shepherd? How are we accessing the source? How are we letting go to let what is new enter into our selves, enter into our internal collective, so that we can, in our behavior patterns as individuals and as an organization, be a safe space for LGBTQ issues? And I just put in a box here, experience is not what happens to you, it is what you do with what happens to you. And with this, I take you to this next screen, and we ask ourselves, where do we start? Okay, where do we start? Okay, what is the first step that I will take in quadrant 1? Okay, Sashi, would you like to start?
Yes. Should I do the entire quadrant 1? How would you
No.
like it, Teresa?
We read sentence by sentence.
We will do it like sentence by sentence. Yes. Advocate people to acceptance of this LGBTQ plus group.
Accept that they are equal.
About myself, because could not understand the behavior, but this has shifted. So compassion and being non-judgmental, respect and to be inclusive.
Educate ourselves more about the issues, concerns, and policies affecting the lives of LGBTQIA plus members. This way we can understand them more.
Continue to work on myself and learn more about my prejudices and biases.
Let go of fear. Learn to accept each person as they are.
Are my principles and value systems inclusive of the LGBTQ plus issue?
Understanding acceptance and where there's an opportunity to be inclusive.
Listening more to what the UN is saying on the issue. Listening to the LGBTQ folks that I'm interacting with more. Accepting LGBTQ young people as they are and listening to their experiences. Respecting LGBTQ folks because we are human. Change my attitude to accept them because they are also celebrated by God.
Yes, created by God, yes. Work at changing my mindset. Let go of my biases. Connect with relatives who are LGBTQ plus, who I had been avoiding. Let go of my fear of them as program participants. Become aware about the LGBTQ plus.
I need to learn how to do advocacy. Continuing the journey to grow more inclusive. We have a long way to go. Compassion to self and others as well.
Very little knowledge on LGBTQ plus issues, but I'm willing to learn about this community and take initiative to be one with them. It was non-existent subject before 30 years. How can I become inclusive of LGBTQ plus issues and make them partners in our mission ministry? What will be the repercussion? Good question. Where and when to start? That is my struggle.
I should be more open and accepting. I have to be more sure of where I stand. I should have better conviction. I should be more patient in learning about these issues.
Thank you to everyone who participated in this first question. It looks like, as we were reading it, it looks like there's a lot of inner self-awareness that is coming across. And when we start to be aware of ourselves, that's when change begins to happen. And let's look at Quadrant 2, what's the first step that we will take in Quadrant 2? I will start reading. To be aware of my language towards this group, being sensitive.
Encourage others to treat them equal as one among us.
Accept them as who they are and respect them. God are good to be inclusive.
We try to use gender neutral pronouns for those who are members of the community. We also try to recognize the unique needs to stay as gender sensitive as possible.
I don't have the necessary skills to work with transgender people.
See them and accept them as they are, open mind and open heart.
How do I behave in a company of LGBTQ plus people?
Treat them equally. Behave normally like how you behave with any other person. Ask politely what gender they wish to be addressed or recognized as and respect their choice.
I just find it amazing that we have one question that asks, how do I behave? And then we have the response coming in the next sentence. The spirit is with us. More cordial, inclusive, and proactive in reaching out to them. Create awareness, being accepting, treating them as I would all, respectfully. Learn and read more about about inclusive and respectful language. Talk about this situation and people who are LGBTQ as normal individuals.
Preparing the space for identity as name with the pronoun he, name with the pronoun she, or name with the pronoun they. Change the internal policies of the organization and have programs and sessions for all program participants and leaders, staff, sisters. Programs can be organized at schools to share these ideas. Collaborate with other Good Shepherd units who are doing this.
I need to change my attitude, conscious of using language, etc.
I need to be respectful when I am in the company of LGBTQ persons. I need to explore what the skills required are. I feel there must be greater openness in accepting them in the residential program. I should ask a person about how to express themselves, their preferences, instead of making assumptions.
Mm. We can see here in the second question, the responses that are coming across, that we are aware of our behavior patterns, and that we are aware that, you know, we need to be inclusive and we need to be accepting. And you can see this repeated every paragraph, you know, how do we make a space for each other? How do we change attitudes and consciousness? And this comes from a result of quadrant 1. So now let's look at quadrant 3, which is our collective internal as an organization, as a community. Okay, Sashi?
Create a program that will help them to earn as anybody so that they can feel accepted and economically empowered.
Okay, it takes time for a mindset shift, and change begins with us. Long process of learning.
Try not to be discriminatory of LGBTQAI members in our outreach activities. Little by little, open the conversation of LGBTQIA+ needs in our community-based programs.
I will continue to share on this topic where possible.
Understand the situation, have open discussion. We have progressed since the last webinar.
What will it take for us to make the mindset shift to accept LGBTQ+ persons as staff and program participants?
In Nepal, we haven't come across any LGBTQ+ as yet. If there are any program participants who are LGBTQ+, we will accept them. Need to investigate more if there are such communities who are afraid to come out, so we can help them.
Make all our sisters and lay partners to understand better the position of LGBTQ people. Teach them to accept them as humans, deserving of all the human rights.
Re-educate ourselves. Even if we are trying our best to accept them, we still have a bias. Need to work with families to help them learn as well. Must really accept them as a human person, making sure we are carrying out our human rights-based approach with LGBTQ clients.
Empower their lives, restore their rights, and uphold their dignity.
Help to build respect among students and teach students to respect LGBTQ folks.
Create awareness in communities and ministries and information, also board members, staff, and program participants.
Conversation is the first step, respecting religion, culture, and generational mindsets.
Some more sessions on these subjects where we can seek help.
We can start a dialogue in our communities. Dialogue, we should educate students ourselves instead of letting them explore these issues by themselves on the internet, where they might find derogatory and unscientific content.
Yeah, thank you for these responses on our collective internal quadrants. Yes, and I look at this and we can see that some responses are looking at the other rather than looking at ourselves. It's very difficult to look at ourselves and say that we as a community need to change. You know, yeah, so it's good that we have a mixture of responses here. Some are looking at themselves, whilst others are looking at other people, you know, and to make them change. So we are all part of the communities. And I like this one. I will continue to share this on this topic where possible. So let's move on to quadrant 4. Yes.
Survey among the community about LGBTQ+ persons and help them through the mainstream of the community activities.
Very slow process and bring the values of Semeri euphrasia.
We admit that our facilities are not ready for adult LGBTQI programs, participants that are male by birth. Although we are open to staff that are members of the community, there is no specific policy for it.
Discuss this with teams that I'm engaged with.
We need to be inclusive. We need to include this in our programs, our formation, etc.
Where there are policies, systems, and governance, what are the policies, systems, and governance structures needed to make Good Shepherd organization a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community? Is this a question you're asking, or are you repeating the question that we have on the slide just now? Because the policies and systems only you would know in respect to your individual countries and in respect to the safe space that you want to create for LGBTQ plus communities. Yes.
We can include the third gender column, male, female, other gender, in database survey and form filling. In our hiring policies, we can create a common policy for Asia Pacific and include all gender inclusive clause, no gender discrimination.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure if everyone here knows that there is an employment policy for Asia Pacific that was crafted by the Asia Pacific Circle of Leaders in the previous cycle, and I will share that with everyone because we do have a human resource policy that's standard across Asia Pacific. Ensure that our staff who are LGBTQ feel safe at work, and our human resource policies are accepting and flexible for different family structures and lifestyle of LGBTQ folk.
Look at our internal policies to see if it is LGBTQ plus friendly and inclusive and address it. Sessions for people in the organization to discuss and understand. A platform for bringing this issue. Study laws in church, country, and incorporate it from a compassionate approach.
Collective policies can change with regards to Good Shepherd and become truly inclusive. We are ready to accept trans persons because we can still put them in a box. But however, we are struggling to open up even a conversation around this in our workplaces and systems.
Create inclusive community by involving them in our mission and ministry.
So as we look at this, it looks like we have a different responses coming forward. And some responses have talked about our own human resource policies and our programs. A lot of the responses still talk about creating awareness, and how do we move forward. But all responses are really very good and very valuable because you're looking at all four quadrants at the same time. Now let's go to the last one and we will wrap up with this one last overall comment on the webinar so far. So the first response is good insight.
Add programs for the LGBTQ plus persons in the respective program activities as an inclusive program activity.
Before we do this, let's also look at our four quadrants of change, because once we add the programs in, and if we are not ready, it may not be in the best interest determination of the program participant. Good to bring this topic, and it will be good to further explore from our own consciousness and let things happen more naturally.
It's a good start to the initiative of a more inclusive Good Shepherd community where no one is truly left behind.
Excellent sharing from the Philippines and Australia.
Extremely happy that so much is being done to accept the LGBTQ plus community.
It has opened us to realize such communities exist, change in our thinking, and some prejudices are removed.
It has opened new perspectives. It is a very important first step for the congregation in working on these issues. I was surprised at first to receive the invitation to this webinar and have questions. The presentation from Winifred was helpful. It will hopefully sink into me. Happy that we as Good Shepherd are responding to the needs we see in the world. Very happy to have a chance to learn more about the LGBTQ issues and to open my mind and to work towards being inclusive in my awareness, remembering that we are all human.
Very enlightening, a good start. Happy Good Shepherd is taking the first step to look into the reality of people in society. We have been shying from looking at this issue when it has been staring at us in our workplaces and with people we are journeying with. extremely educational and have been able to shift mindset and perspectives to be less biased, fearful, and avoiding, and to be more accepting and respectful of this community.
It has been an eye-opener. This is enveloping all the position papers and has a significant place in each one of them.
Inner circle sharing, orientation, educate the communities around, and try to remove the label or stigma, fear from all around. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing screen. And I just want to express gratitude to all your responses. Really, I want to give a round of applause to everyone. Okay, round of applause to all. Thank you so much. Maybe if those of you who can stay on, just anyone who has any reflections, if you need to leave, please feel free to leave, and I will send a recording and all the slides and the Google form responses to everyone. Okay, so anyone has a reaction to this session from Winifred last 2 weeks ago and this one? Just
Can I share
yes.
a few words?
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to thank Sister Winifred and Ms. Teresa for sharing this, and I'm so glad that we as students got invited here, and I'm frankly very surprised that we're invited here. And it's really great to be part of this community that recognizes these issues, first of all, and being part of this community really empowers us that, you know, we will be able to share some of our thoughts that we wouldn't be able to share elsewhere. And I'm very grateful to that. And also I'd like to share what happened on December 7th. And I remember that December 7th, when we had the International Day of the Girl Child program for India, we had some of our students from Chennai and other schools around Chennai speak about the LGBT rights issues, and it was great for them to have a platform where they are able to openly discuss this. Whereas in other schools, when they are not able to discuss these issues, it would be really empowering for them to come to Good Shepherd and openly talk about it. So the ripples of change that is happening in Good Shepherd is not just confined to Good Shepherd. It moves on to other schools. Since I'm a part of a school, I can only talk based on educational institutions. But something that I do know is that when we create this change in Good Shepherd, all other students from part of our community get this amazing opportunity to just express themselves and be who they are. So I'm very grateful to this community for giving me that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And it's really nice to know that Good Shepherd has created this safe space for the schools in Chennai. Keep up the good work, you know. Yes, and let's be witnesses, yeah, to other schools. Yes, Sabina, do you want to say something?
No, not at this point, but what I feel is this is a very good opening for all of us. I mean, maybe, you know, this issue had been very much disturbing me personally for about 3 years back. I remember, I do not know whether Sister Maria Rose is attending this session. I remember she shared with me about she meeting a group of lesbians somewhere in Chennai, and she was very happy that she met them and had a conversation with them, and they were also felt very happy that she had that conversation with them. So I feel like, you know, when we are traveling in the train, we come across these people coming to us many times. Maybe they are begging or whatever they are, you know, but I have never thought of like talking to them and considering them as human persons. So this session has really opened me out to so much. I have a real compassion for them, to accept them, and to really to start having a conversation with them, you know, and from there something more will emerge. That is what I feel. Thank you. Thank you for this platform, preparing, I mean, giving us this platform for us to learn, to be more aware.
Thank you so much, Sabina. Thank you. And thank you for sharing about suspending judgment, and being a good shepherd witness to people who are really experiencing marginalization and exclusion from mainstream society. Thank you for that. Maybe we can have one or two more reactions, then we can call it a day. Yes, Joan.
Teresa, and also Winnie and all of us. Now, sometimes we are like, I'm talking about from me, and I'm not saying judging anybody, but as a religious myself, and I know collectively as Good Shepherd, we are so fearful of our candidates who come to religious life, and we are wondering, and in our policies, we may need to look at it and really reflect. Are we looking at this fear behind us that are they LGBTQ, or, how do we accept them? So I think this is a fear in the church as well, as religious young people coming in or new people coming in, candidates coming in, will they be an LGBTQ, and what is our policy? So we try to shy away, we try to avoid, we don't want to speak about it. And we pray that nobody who is an LGBTQ or, and other than a female will come. So I think it's so much of work to be done with our mind and our heart to address this issue. Because it is we always look at it as the other, and somewhere out there somebody is like that, but not in our own family, not in our own organization, and no new candidate who comes would be like that. But I really feel we need to do a lot of self-searching, soul-searching, and looking at our biases and our hearts,
Yeah, thank you.
But I want to thank Winnie and yourself for having brought us into this platform, this discussion.
Yes.
It opened our eyes and our hearts. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you. I just want to react to what Joan has just shared and ask each one of us, like, when is a heterosexual person, we don't fear, but why? Because candidates leave to get married and to be with someone, or to find their own space within a family system. But when it comes to people who are maybe lesbians or transgender or intersex, then we feel a little bit uncomfortable and and may not accept them. So it's good to ponder why we have a distinction between heterosexual people and the people from the LGBTQ community. Maybe one last reaction, and then we will close for today.
Can I please share?
Sure.
So as Monica said, we had a panel discussion on December 7th. And one important thing that happened because of the panel is we got people who actively want to create change, especially students. And we had one person, a very young woman called Neelam Jain, who is actively working towards including transgender people, especially in workplaces, creating safe workplaces for them. And we as Good Shepherd Chennai, we are looking forward to collaborate with them. We are looking forward to collaborate with organizations called Lgbtiq and Nine is Mine, who are actively engaging in youth advocacy. And we are looking forward to creating safe spaces for students, especially. It is very necessary because I have shared with Sister Winifred once how students in Chennai or students in India are internally homophobic themselves sometimes, and they don't realize it while they are experiencing difficulties with their gender identity or their sexuality, while also being internally homophobic because of the culture and traditions that they were brought up with. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create small conversation circles where people are given that freedom to express so that they feel included. We are actively working towards that, and we are hoping that in 2021 we can take it forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanjana. So with this, the voice of the youth, we will end today's session. And we want to thank everyone for being part of this. And I want to thank Winifred especially for, starting off this conversation and leading us through the first phase of understanding the issue. Winifred, do you have any words that you want to say? But then we just close off for today.
Well, I only want to say thank you to you, Teresa, because you lead the way. And it just really excites me when I see the young students here on this webinar with us. You are the hope of the future, and you are Good Shepherd through and through. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And we thank Good Shepherd Philippines and Good Shepherd Australia and New Zealand for their sharing today. Very insightful. So thank you, everyone, and have a good day and blessings for Advent and Christmas, and then hope. There's hope. And we will meet again next year. Truly, we will meet again next year.
Yes.
Yes. So bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.